Hi everyone, good day and welcome to another lecture series of employee training and development. I'm glad that you are here and listening to this lecture series. I hope all is well with you right now and your family during these very uncertain and challenging times. I hope that you will enjoy your journey being a student and a learner in this entire semester. The video series or lecture series that we'll be talking about for this moment is about needs assessment. In the previous lecture series, we were discussing about the different processes, different methods, and different facets of training and development. Basically, we discussed about the introduction of doing employee training and development in various organizations and companies. And along with that, we were able to tackle the different ethical values and ethical dilemmas that practitioners might face in real life situation where they're in the field practicing and doing training and development in the IO field. In this lecture series, we'll be talking about the different process of conducting needs assessment. And we start with the question why needs assessment is necessary. Why, why not just give the training itself directly to the employees or to the people of the organization? Why do we need to conduct needs assessment? If you are curious in knowing the answer, I hope that you'll finish watching and learning the video session for this whole lecture series. So let's dive now to our presentation. All right. So again, welcome to our employee and development Training and Development Needs Assessment chapter. So same with the previous lecture series, we have identified several learning objectives for learners. So at the end of this lecture series, learners are expected to discuss the role of organization analysis, person analysis, and task analysis, and needs assessment. So you'll be able to note how each of these factors contributes to the whole success of the needs assessment process, the three analysis. Next objective is identify different methods used in this assessment and identify the advantages and disadvantages. Yeah, in doing needs assessment, you need to have a process, you need to have a method. And there are several methods available that's been existing in the practice and in the field for quite long. And as learners, we need to know and distinguish the different advantages and disadvantages of these methods to make our needs assessment more practical. Third objective is discuss the concerns of upper and mid-level managers and trainers in needs assessment. As I've mentioned in the previous lecture series, this subject is a very business-oriented course, so you will not be dealing with the whole process of training itself, but also you'll be tackling the different stakeholders or the different people involved in the business and on the internal aspect of the business that includes the upper managers, the CEOs, the trainers, etc. And we'll be talking about that also in the needs assessment process. Next objective is to explain how personal characteristics, input, output, consequences, and feedback influence performance and learning. This is on the internal aspect of the person, of the trainees. So these are referring to the internal traits of your future trainees. And we'll be talking about how these factors influences the success of the needs assessment and of course the training itself. Another objective is to create conditions to ensure that employees are receptive to training. So we will be tackling what are the characteristics or the things that will make a person or a trainee more receptive to training, or more um, wherein the trainees can fully grasp the information or the knowledge more. So we'll be talking on the methods as well, and of course the conditions that will influence that. Next objective is to discuss the steps involved in conducting task analysis. This is very important. So we'll be talking more about this as we go along the PowerPoint presentation. Next is analyze the task analysis data to determine the task for which people need to be trained. Because we are planning to do the training because we have specific reasons in the first place why we need to do that, right? And that is the role of task analysis. And last objective is to explain competency models in the process used to develop them. Right. So the first question that I'll be asking to you who've been watching this video is, why do we need to do needs assessment in the first place? Right? So we have various answers. So please let me know your answers by the comment section below. Please type your answers. But in a nutshell, we are doing a needs assessment is really to have a basis and a proof why do we need to do training itself. It will be a cost. It will be it will be a liability to the organization if we will be doing trainings that is not in line with the needs of the organization, of the person, and the existing tasks from the people in the organization, right? So the design process begins with the needs assessment. So I think we've been discussing on the previous lecture series that um, we have a framework to follow, right? The framework will serve as the the blueprint of the whole training and process, and this is it. The needs assessment is the beginning of the blueprint. It will start the process of training and development in the organization, right? So what process are these? So subsequent steps in the process include the following. Number one, we need to ensure that employees have the motivation and basic skills necessary to learn. Creating a positive learning environment, making sure that trainees use learned skills on the job, and choosing the training method and evaluating the results. So these are the four characteristics that you need to put in mind whenever you'll be doing your needs assessment process. So if you're going to summarize it, it's like looking on a picture of a person living in a house, right? So does the person have the motivation to perhaps work in the home, like doing everyday chores, right? Does the house have the perhaps does the people around the house would motivate the person to work from the daily chores? So that's the environment itself of the person, right? And from the experiences of doing the chores every day, does a person learn specific skills? And would that skill be applied to another task inside the house, right? And uh, when we look on the chores or the completed task of the person inside the house, does it have a specific um, differences like before and after he or she been working in the house? So it's really on the internal aspect of the person. We start with the internals of the person, the motivation, and then we start from the outside, like we check if the environment is conducive for learning. And lastly, we need to check if there are if if there are available methods that we can measure if the person has really learned something and applied it, right? So needs assessment is a process used to determine whether training is necessary. So yeah, that's the answer to the question that I've been asking earlier. So it is a process. So is training necessary? So, when we talk about a specific organization, for example, if we talk about, I think we talk about the airline and the coffee shop last time. So right now we'll talk about BPO companies, right? So the BPO company or business processing outsourcing are those who've been doing talking to customers, right, and dealing with their concerns. So if we talk about the context of BPO and then most likely, the most common things that they are conducting is so-called this customer service. Do we need to conduct customer service training to our existing employees, or do we need to conduct training for customer service to the new employees? Right? Is it necessary? Perhaps some say would say no, some say would say no, some say would say yes, but it really depends on the process of needs assessment. And we'll be talking more about that as we go on along the presentation. So what does needs assessment involves? And this is it. This is the example. So there are three components here. We have the organizational analysis, the person analysis, and the task analysis. So going back to the example earlier, we talked about the BPO companies, and the BPO company here is kind of the leading company, right? And the company is one of the most well-known BPO or number one BPO company in the Philippines in the context of Philippines. So what as they go along the competition of the market, they wanted to still maintain their number one spot. So that's their goal. The company's goal is to maintain their status of being the number one BPO company, right? And to become the leading BPO company in the Philippines or in the Asia Pacific region, right? And how many percent of this organization contribute to the success of the company? So we say most of them, the agents or the call center agents are the frontliners. So they are the ones who really give the company's reputation of being the number one company. So going to the agents, what are the needs? What are they capable of doing? Do they have the um since they are the leading or company, so perhaps they are excellent in doing customer service, right? So what other characteristics are they lacking? And uh, on their everyday task as call center agents, what are their what call this? What are the existing responsibilities that needs to be addressed or to be transferred into another department? So, for example, if have they been doing counter checkings and customers like um they would like to rate if the agent was doing well his job. So perhaps we can transfer it to quality assurance department, right? So on the example that I've mentioned earlier, I've already been discussing the different analysis that should be done in an organization, and we started with the organizational analysis, and I think I've mentioned earlier the the goal of the company. What is the goal of the company? And this is where is the business strategies on training and development, which was discussed on the previous lecture, would came in, right? So everything that we've been discussing for the past weeks is interconnected, right? So on the last lecture series, we talk about an introduction to training and development, and we talk about the how business strategies would influence training and development, right? So in this context here, in the organizational analysis, we'll be basing our organizational analysis on the framework on the trajectory of the business, depending 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, what would be the mission, vision, goals of the organization, right? And what are the existing resources of the company, right? Or do they need to create their own resources, right? So next is we have the person analysis. So we will be determining whether performance deficiencies result from a lack of knowledge, skill, or ability. So we will be talking about the KSA, knowledge, skills, abilities. Do we have employees who have been existing? So the new employees, do they have the specific KSAs, knowledge, skill, abilities of a call center agent? How about the tenured or the old or the tenured call center agents in the company? Do they have the existing knowledge or do they need another refresher training on in this context, customer service, right? So yeah, and that's the question I've answered. Who needs training? And if we will be giving the training to the employees, how ready are they in grasping knowledge, in grasping information? Will they become receptive or will they become resistant? And if they will be resistant, how are we going to deal with them as trainers? And the last part of the analysis is the task analysis. So this would identify the important tasks in knowledge, skills, and behaviors that need to be emphasized in training for employees to complete their tasks. So tasks here are the assigned responsibilities and minute roles in the organization. So for example, as call center agents for customer service representative, so their main task is to uh, ask and get the reports or the queries, to answer the queries of the customers, to assist them with their billing issues, to give technical support as well. So those are the different tasks of a customer service representative. So are those tasks still important, or do we need to realign the task in line with the new business strategies and goals of the organization, right? So again, I think I've asked this on the beginning of the presentation, and there are a lot of reasons why do we need to do needs assessment. And the first thing is training may be incorrectly used as a solution to a performance problem. So for example, if the um, at the end of the quarter, quality assurance department or QA section from a call center company or BPO company would conduct an audit, and they found out that specific 25% of the agents or the call center agents have poor performance with their customer service. So there were times wherein they were not able to manage the um, customers' queries, and at the same time, their performance and motivations at work were very low. So, if you are a person who would assume immediately, okay, perhaps we'll be giving this agents a training on motivation or call this customer service because their scores on customer service is low. But however, we haven't fully grasp the whole picture. So is it really the reason that um, the call center agents were having poor customer service because of the motivation? And is it really because of um, the stress from work? How about they are not motivated at work and affect which affects their performance and they have low scores? Would it be that the management also influences the motivations of the of the call center agents. So perhaps there were times wherein the management did not show support through incentives or through activities that would boost the morale of the call center agents. Right, so there's a lot of reasons why they would perform low in a specific task, right? And if you're a trainer or an IO psychologist and who you would just assume that perhaps these agents would need training because they have low performance. But we haven't checked the whole picture yet. So yeah, so it's very critical to conduct needs assessment because we will be tackling the needs of the organization, of the task, and the person. So it's a whole 360 degrees. Another reason why needs assessment is important because training programs may have the wrong content, objectives, of methods, right? So we'll be giving a training that is not in line with the methods and the content of what the agents would want or basing on their needs, right? Another component why a needs assessment is necessary is trainees may be sent to training programs for which they do not have the basic skills, prerequisite skills, or confidence needed to learn. Yeah, so it's like we are baking the bread at a wrong temperature at the wrong specific duration of time. So the ending of that, it could be the bread will become half cooked or not cooked or burned. They will be burnt bread. So that's the metaphor that I've been thinking. If we will be sending these people to training without the basic skills, prerequisite skills, or the confidence inside them as trainees. So we need also to consider that. Another thing why needs assessment is necessary is that training will not deliver the expected learning, behavior change, or financial results that the company expects. Right. If you will not conduct training analysis, I know if you will not conduct organizational analysis and you will just conduct um, in an instant a training, and then you are not taking in consideration the resources that are available in the organization, then the finance office will just be shocked of the expenses of the training that you are already conducting. So it's really important to conduct organizational analysis as well. How capable the organization in conducting this type of trainings. And last, why needs assessment is necessary because money will be spent on training programs that are unnecessary because they are unrelated to the company's business strategy. So again, it's a liability. So if you will conduct a training that is not necessary or not related to the business strategy or goal, you are contributing liabilities to the company. So you are giving loss. It's a waste of time and money. Right. So on this slide, figure 3.1, this is the causes and outcomes of needs assessment. So if you would say it's very small, but let me just explain this to everyone. So in conducting needs assessment, we really need to be grounded with the context. So there are three contexts that we need to make sure that we are in line with the context or we are grounded, and this will be our guide. So we will be looking on the organization itself, the whole organization. Next is we'll be looking on the person from the organization. Like we'll be looking like inside, both inside and outside. So if you are the peer person inside the organization, how would you look onto the organization in your own lens? Right? And if you are the organization or you are from the upper management, how would you view the person on your lens? And last is we have the task analysis. So this is the everyday responsibilities given to the people inside the organization. So this is referring to the different strategies in achieving the organizational goals. So we have here the reasons or the pressure points. So the reasons here or the pressure points are the forces or the pressure, yeah, the pressure. You feel the pressure right now. So it's like the forces that drives um, the three factors here in the organizational task analysis that needs to do something out from it. So these are the different pressure that why we need to conduct needs assessment, right? Why do we need to analyze the organization, the task in the person? So we have here the legislation. This is from the law. We have the basic skills, poor performance, new technology, and we have a lot of factors here or force that drives us to conduct needs assessment, right? So, these three factors, by the way, can be answered by specific guide questions, right? So, for the organization analysis, the guide question is, what is the context for? What is um, the context of the organization? Next is we have the uh, person analysis. So, who needs training? Who will be the person? Who will the people who will be conducted by training, who will undergo training. And the task analysis here is the what is the focus of the training? What needs to be done, right? And the outcomes on the other side of the PowerPoint presentation is we have here the expected outcomes out from the training and the needs assessment. So we have here what trainees needs to learn, who receives training, what training method is appropriate, so how much does the training would cost, what type of methods of training are we going to use, will it be traditional or the technology-based training? So table 3.1 here shows the key concerns of upper level and mid-level managers and trainers in needs assessment. I think on the previous slides, I've shared that in conducting training, you will not just be talking about the process itself, but also the different stakeholders in doing needs assessment. And these includes the people here, the upper level, mid-level managers, and the trainers, right? So we have here a matrix, a sample matrix, table 3.1. So we have here organizational, person, and task analysis. And we have also three columns. So we have the upper level, mid-level, and the trainers. So we have here different perspectives and different lenses in viewing specific analysis. So if you are an upper level manager, so perhaps you are the um, in the BPO company or the call center agents, you are the operations manager. So these people are the ones who are leading a number of team managers or supervisors, and the supervisors are the one who manage teams of call center agents. So it's like a hierarchy. And the trainers here are the ones who conduct the onboarding training, for example, customer service or product information about the policies of the product, right? So just putting here an example. So if you are an upper level manager, so if you are a um, in this context of the PPO company, if you are an operations manager, so is training important to achieve our business objective? How does training support our business strategy? Right. But if you are a mid-level manager, so for example, we have the supervisor itself, so or the team managers. Um, do I want to spend money on training? How much? So this is referring to the financial aspect of the managers on the organization. How will training and development help meet the business goals, right? And as trainers, do they have the budget to buy the training services? Will managers support the training? Uh, so there are specific persons involved and they have different lenses and perspective on looking on the organization, the person in a task analysis. Right, so they have various characteristics, but also they have also similarities and overarching themes. Aside from that, there are also what we call SMEs. They are also participating in the needs assessment. SMEs are the subject matter experts, so these are referring to employees, academics, managers, technical experts, trainers, and even customer or suppliers who are knowledgeable with regard to number one, training issues, knowledge, skills, and abilities or KSA required for successful task performance, necessary equipment and condition under which task has to be performed. It varies from in the context of BPO company, it varies from context to context. So, with my experience working on a BPO company, they have internal SMEs. So these are employees who just been studying the policy, the product, the market um, of this product. So, for example, if we talk about telecommunications, um, they've been doing a lot of research and a lot of ratings on this specific telecommunication company, and also they've made a lot of compare and contrast of other competitors. So they are really the experts on this subject. So that's why they're called subject matter experts. And it's not only in the internal aspect, but they have also external aspects. So we have here researchers, um, we have also academicians, professors who've been working, and we have researchers who've been working independent in an independent way, and some of them are working on research laboratories. So they're also subject matter experts, right? We'll be needing their opinion and their expertise in conducting needs assessment. Right? Another individuals or group of people who will be participating in the assessment is what we call the job incumbents. So these are the people who are currently doing or performing the job of the people inside the organization. Right? So why do we need to include the job incumbents in needs assessment? So those who've been working in the organization and doing the task and responsibilities. The reason is that they have the experience, so they tend to be more knowledgeable with the job, and they can also be a great hindrance to the training process itself because if they do not feel they have had input in the process, so there would be some issues with the belongingness of this incumbent employees. So this is table 3.2, the advantages and disadvantages of needs assessment techniques. So we will be now talking about the different needs assessment techniques. Right? So we have here observation, questionnaires, interviews, FGD, and collaboration tools. We have documentation, we have online technology, and historical data reviews. Right? So let's start with observation. So this is just really observing what the people and the organization have been doing. So the advantages of this is that it will generate data relevant to work environment because it's real life experiences that have been existing in the organization. The disadvantages of this is that and you need to have a very skilled um, observers and employees might have behaviors. The employee's behavior might be effective because they have been observed by strangers of people outside the organization, and this might also be quite costly, right? So we have another here is we have the questionnaires, and this is one of the most common thing that we can do on these assessment techniques, and this is really giving of surveys and the measure or scales that would measure specific construct. or competency, depending on the construct you wanted to measure. And this is inexpensive because you'll be using pen and paper, or right now, since most of us are using paperless philosophy, so you could just send online surveys, send the links, and let the people answer the questionnaire, and voila, I mean the results are there, right? And data can be very summarized. You can use Excel, or you can use statistical software in generating data and generating analysis from the data gathered. The disadvantages of doing questionnaire is perhaps it requires a lot of time. It lacks detail. Yeah, you can generate data like you can have um an a generalized data like a conclusion, but you don't know the hows and why certain people do that or feel like that, right? That's the limitation of purely quantitative tools, which can be found on qualitative tools such as interviews and focus group discussions. And we will go now to the next step, and that is the interviews. So the advantage of that is really that in interviews you can really know the experiences and the different lived experiences or the phenomenon of the employees or the experiences of the employees, which is kind of limited in terms of very structured or scaled um, questionnaires. But right now, most of the researchers are integrating the mixed method approach, so they are giving scales, and at the same time, they have an open-ended questions wherein participants have the capacity, or no, I mean they have the opportunity to share their thoughts on specific questions that the researchers were asking, right? But the disadvantage of doing interviews, it's really time consuming. It generates a lot of time from the trainers, from the researcher, and from the participants as well. Another that is yeah, the scheduling is really quite challenging in this aspect because we'll be talking about schedules of different people in the context of call center agent, in the context of call center company. So they have it's a 24-hour operation, so we have a very sophisticated time scheduling management there. So yeah, time is quite challenging here. Aside from interviews, we have also FGDs or focus group discussion in a similar manner with interviews. But in this part, you'll be doing groups, so you'll be interviewing group of people, specific questions or interview schedules will be given to the people, right? And also, this is also time consuming, and also the answers are limited to specific groups. So this is not um we are not trying on the interviews and on the focus group discussions, we're not trying to generalize the whole context of the employees, but we wanted to get a representative. We wanted to know what specific experiences does call center agents have with this, for example, stress or motivation, right? We don't want to generalize here, but we wanted to know how and why. Documentation here is another technique, and this is referring to the archives, written manuals, the records, that that can be found on the company or the organization. We can also look on the HR's files, like on the training files before, if the organization has been existing for quite long. So perhaps if the company has been existing for quite long time, so perhaps you can look on the training history. So how frequent his training is being conducted, what type of training, who conducted the training, who were the participants of the training, so we can look on that, right? And also the disadvantage of this one is materials may be obsolete, so the results before might not be fit in the context of the current organization. Right? We have also here the online technology or the software. So we have, um, we have a lot of online platforms right now that we can conduct um, surveys or focus group discussions or interviews. You can do interviews online, like we're doing right now. You can do video conferencing. We can also do, um, you can send survey links via a lot of platforms. For example, we have Google Sheets, Google Forms, so we can do that as well. But the disadvantage of that, of course, is we have the infrastructure, the cybersecurity. It might be breached, right? So we need also to consider that. And we have also the historical data reviews. So this is referring to the um, data before in the organization. So we can look on the previous experiences. So perhaps people before were more tolerant to stress as compared to now. Yeah, we can do comparisons. But the disadvantage of this one is that data might not be accurate 100% and incomplete because it's been stored before. But it really depends if the organization has the capacity to store information in the most accurate way. So it really depends. So this is the methods that we can use in doing needs assessment here. So these are the techniques and these are the methods, right? So we have here for a newly created job. So these are the jobs that is created um, on the it depends. For example, if there is a new task, a new responsibilities, new department in the organization. So yeah, there are new jobs. So this is the method. So for a new created job, trainers often do not new have incumbents. So they need to rely on other information. So they can look on online technology as well, can do historical data. So for historical data, they can review the information regarding the current performance levels, right? They can also use online technology. They can use website. They can do conference calls from colleagues from different organizations with a similar line of business, right? So all of these methods, there is no single method, no, that is superior or inferior because each one of it has its own limitations and of course its own strengths. So multiple trainers are using the multiple methods or they've been using methods here, several methods to in doing needs assessment. So we have here focus group. Yeah. Crowdsourcing here is asking a large group of people to help provide information for needs assessment that they are not traditionally asked to do so. So this is like survey on the public, like they've been asking opinions from the public. So what should be the new for example, the new site manager, the traits, right? So this is quite costly and sure, this has been done in really big companies who have the resources, financial resources in doing crowdsourcing. And we have here also benchmarking. So this is visiting or using information about other companies. We have the same who has the same line of business to help to help the organization determine the appropriate type, level, and frequency of training. So it's like um so competitor we have in the US, we have Amazon, right? So perhaps Lazada is still existing. It's only in the Philippines and in also other Southeast Asian countries, and also with Shopee. So perhaps they can benchmark the training practices of Amazon and Alibaba, for example, in doing training with their employees because they've been in the industry for quite long, right? So they can look on the different um, the practices that's been doing on the more experienced organization. So yes, we arrive now on the process of needs assessment. So finally, this is what we've been waiting for. So this is figure 3.2, the needs assessment process. So we have here the organization analysis, the person analysis, and the training in development method. So we start first with the organization analysis. So again, we try to determine, or we try to ask ourselves, so what are the um, strategic direction? What is the business goals? What is the available resources of the organization? And um, what are the people who will support the training itself? So will the managers support? Will the SME support? Are all the stakeholders in the organization will support the training? Right? And after we have determined, or after we have analyzed the organization, we will now proceed to the next section, and that is, do we want to devote time and money to training? Is it a yes or no? Or do we have an option to to venture into external training, or are we going to outsource training, or are we going to talk with HR department on how can we perhaps change or modify some of the aspects of the organization, right? If the answer is yes, then we will be considering the two other factors on the upper part, that is the person analysis. So we will try to consider the people of the organization who will be conducted, who will be undergoing the training. So what are the characteristics, right? Do they have the knowledge? Do they have the skills? Do they know um, how to work with other co-workers, right? So, how are they motivated? Do we need to reward them if they will perform well? So, those are the questions that we need to consider in analyzing the person and the organization. Next is we have the task analysis, or the competency model. So, what specific job are we going to focus on, right? What KSAs are we going to focus on, right? And after the task analysis, we will now be able to develop a training method out from that analysis. So we know we'll be evaluating if the training is effective or not. We will be tackling if the learning environment or the learning space is conducive enough so that learning will successfully transfer to the people, and what um, learning theories are we going to utilize here. Right. So let's start first with the organizational analysis. So we will now go deeper in the organizational analysis. So again, we'll start first the company's strategic direction. What is the goal of the company? So for example, how would a company look like 3 to 5 years or 10 years from now, right? Would it be the number one call center company in Asia Pacific alone, or in the whole world? Right? Strategic role of training influences the frequency and type of training. Yeah, right. So that's really on the company's direction. Next is who are the people who will support the organizational analysis? Will it be solely by the training department, or the HR department will also take in? And will it be financially be supported by the organization, or is it self-supporting or funded by the individuals in the organization? Or will the participants be paying specific amount to make the training sustainable? And of course, lastly, the resources. What existing resources are there in the company? that we can utilize in conducting the training? Do we have the enough resources? Do we have the enough budget in doing this training, or will it only contribute to the liabilities of the company? Right? So those are the things that you need to consider. And let's go now to the next aspect of analysis, and that is the person analysis. Right? So when we try to identify the individuals here, it would help us to identify the employees who needs training. So are we going to give the training to everyone in the organization or to those who has poor performance? Right? And of course, the need for training may come from the pressure points or the forces that contributes why we need to conduct training, and that was discussed on the previous slides. Right? Also, we need to consider the readiness for training of the people in the organization. So, do they have the characteristic necessary to learn the program content or and apply it on the job? Do we have the conducive environment in um, conducting the research? I mean, conducting the training. Right? So, those are the questions that you need to consider in doing the readiness for training. So person analysis here involves the process, includes evaluating person characteristic, input, output, consequences, and feedback. So this is referring to the internal aspects of the person. A major pressure point for training is substandard or poor performance, and that is really we really need to consider the whole picture of the context of the person why or the person is or having poor performance. So we need to have a bigger picture on this matter. Another potential indicator of the need for training is if the job changes such that current levels of performance need to be improved or employees must be able to complete new tasks. So we need to have a scores or benchmark or a specific um, measure on if the person will be assigned to a new task or responsibilities, will it be still the same or not? So we need to consider on that matter as well. So this figure 3.3 here shows the process of analyzing the factors that influence employee performance and learning. So we have here the person characteristics, so the existing basic skills, the cognitive ability, the IQ, reading level, self-efficacy, awareness of training needs, and then we need to also add the input. So that is um, how the person understand, like how the task is performed, when will it be performed, the situational constraints or the environmental constraints, the social support that the person will get within the organization and outside the organization, and the opportunity to perform the task as well. The output for that is we have the expectations for learning and performance. Like what at the end of the training, what will be the person's learning or the increase of knowledge, right? And of course, the consequences of the analysis, we have the norms, the benefits, and the rewards. And lastly, the feedback coming from the outside of the person. So, um, like how will it improve the performance or motivation, for example, and will it have a detail? And the last there, the outside of the boxes is we have the motivation to learn, we have the learning and the job performance. Will there be an increase or decrease of job performance? So going back to person analysis here, we have the consequences, and this is referring to the type of incentive that employees receive for performing well. Feedback here is the information that employees receive while they are performing. Of course, when they talk to or perform and then they have good performance, then their manager or their supervisor will comment that they have done a great job, or perhaps if they're performing well, so you need to I think we need to have a coaching session to help you have higher scores. So that would be a form of feedbacking. Another aspect is what we call here motivation to learn. So this is the internal motives of the person on learning, right? So other personal characteristics include basic skills, cognitive ability, language skills, and other traits that employees need to perform their jobs or learn in training and development programs effectively. Basic skills, of course, we have, if you most of you have are done with psychological assessment or intelligence testing, so we've done this. So these are the skills that is really pertaining to the cognitive aspect of the individual. So that includes aptitude, reading and writing skills. Of course, sometimes mathematical skills, abstract reasoning, right? Um, the cognitive aspect here is how the individual really process information, be it verbal comprehension, quantitative, and the reasoning ability. So this is how a person process information, how he makes reasoning, what is right and what is wrong, right? So there is study shows that cognitive ability really influences the success of the organization, but it's not only about cognitive ability, but also other aspects as well. Reading ability here is the ability to really process what um, the employees or the person was reading and process and comprehend. So it's also important aspect in doing a certain job. Self-efficacy here is a famous theory in motivation in psychology. So if you would recall with your theories of personality and with your social psychology subject, so this has been developed by Albert Bandura. So it is a belief that a person can do achieve the task that was given to them. So self-efficacy in the context of job or IO psychology is the employees believe that they can perform their job or learn the content of the training program successfully. So it's like a mindset that they can do and achieve things expected from them. So we can know, or we can increase self-efficacy because it will be helpful in making the training successful, right? We can increase the trainees of efficacy by letting the employees know the purpose of the training, right? So if we give them why do they need to do or to undergo the training, perhaps we can give them um, the sense of purpose, and this sense of purpose might contribute to the feeling of they can really do the job or complete the training, right? Another ways of increasing the self-efficacy of the employees or the trainees is to provide information as much as possible about the training program and the purpose of the training prior to the actual training. This is to really give them a heads up or to set their expectations as well. By setting the expectations, perhaps we can um, let them have the belief or mindset that they can really complete the training or do the training. Another ways of increasing self-efficacy is showing employees and trainees the training success of their peers who are now in similar jobs. So it's like um, showing them that this is the effect or this is the product of the training, right? It's like showing what has been done. And lastly, providing employees with feedback that learning is under their control and they have the ability and the responsibility to overcome any learning difficulties they experience in the program. So this is more on the accountability aspect. Like it's giving the trainees and the employees the autonomy that they have the capacity to overcome challenges and they can really have in control in what like the learning, the processing of information is in their hand, and of course, the success of completing the training is in their hands as well. So it's more on also empowering the employees and the trainees. Mm. So let's go now to the awareness of training needs, career interests, and goals. So this is in connection to the person itself, to the person analysis. So what is the current interest of the people in the organization, right? So managers, they should communicate the link between training and improvement of skill weaknesses or knowledge deficiencies, right? So they should, as managers, it's their task to really know the dynamics that is happening within the team. So what is the strength of the team? So perhaps the strength is that they are very performing, meaning that the team is, for example, they're the top performing team in the whole site. However, the weakness is that they don't have this close connections or camaraderie within the group because perhaps the team is overworking and they don't have the opportunity to socialize with each other. Right? Another aspect is that employees need to be given a choice of what programs to attend and must understand how actual training assignments are made to maximize the motivation to learn. So this is in connection to expectation setting, right? So before we start the training itself, we need to let know how prepared, how well are the employees and trainees in participating in a specific training. Right? So to ensure that the work environment enhances trainees' motivation to learn. So I've mentioned earlier that part of the person analysis is really to know how conducive the learning environments will be. So these are the guide questions that we need to consider. So are there materials? How about the time? How about the job related information? And how are the employees going to use the new skills in their existing jobs? Right? So those are the things that you need to consider, right? Next is you need also to speak positively about the company's training programs to employees because again, you are building a brand from these people and you are bringing the name of the organization, right? Another thing that you need to consider in person analysis is the age and generation. So we have a lot of diversity happening right now in the workplace. So it's not that the workers right now are not the we call it the elderly. I mean that we have a lot of a diverse workforce. It's like a fruit salad. So we have here the millennials or and Generation Y. So they are called Generation Y. So they are born after 1980s. So they are from 1980s up until 2000, I think. Or no, they are from 1980s to 1994. Yeah, they are the millennials or the Generation Y. So the characteristic of this, they are very optimistic, willing to work and learn, and technology literate. So this is the time we're in. Computer just started in their lives. They are not born with a computer, but they are ahead of the computer, and then the computer just came in with their life. The next is Gen X. This is the prior to Gen Y. So they need feedback and flexibility. They dislike close supervision. So these are the people who are born in the Philippine context. They are the born within the martial law. Yeah. And the baby boomers, 1946 to 1964, they are the the elderly in the workforce. So they are the competitive, hardworking, and concerned that all employees are fairly treated. So those are the characteristics. And we have the traditionalists. Yeah, they are really the most senior on the workforce in the organization. So they are patriotic and loyal, great deal of knowledge and the history of organizational life. So these individuals are those born during the World War II. Yeah. And recent developments after the Gen Y, we have now what we call the Gen Z, right? So they are the individuals who are born in the year 2000 onwards or 1999. So computer is already in their system. So they are the most technologically advanced age group, right? So what do you think would be the implications of different ages or diversity in the ages and the workforce in conducting needs assessment in the context of training and development? Please let me know your answers in the comment section below. So I'll be willing to answer your questions and suggestions, or you can start with statements. Then hopefully I can reply to your answers. So we have here the input of the person analysis, right? So person analysis, so we have different categories on it, the input, output, the feedback. So let's start with the input. The input here is a situational constraint. So this is the lack of proper tools. So I'm asking earlier, um, is the organization has the correct or proper resources in doing the training? So it's very crucial in conducting training, right? So we don't want a training wherein we don't have any computers or we don't have the software that needs. So we are conducting a product training and it needs software and we don't have the software. So how can we do a training? How can we do an effective training without the software that is very necessary, right? And next is how supportive is the management with the training? The management can really give or break the morale of the people in the organization. So they're very important as well, right? So trainees need to understand what specifically they are expected to learn in the training program. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier. And the norms, these are the referring to the accepted standards. So in the practices that has been done in the organization. So it will also influence the needs assessment. So what is the practice? What is the norm in terms with needs assessment, in terms with training in the organization, right? In doing, um, if training is really the best fit of the problem to answer the problem, so you need to consider the following statements here. If employees lack the knowledge and skill to perform a job and other factors are satisfactory, training is needed, right? Again, if employees lack the knowledge and skill to perform a job and other factors are satisfactory, training is needed. So for example, if the relationship between the managers, supervisors, and the upper management is okay with the employees, but there is still poor performance, perhaps we can look on training. I think there is a need for training, right? If employees have the knowledge and skill to perform, but input-output consequences or feedback is inadequate, training may not be the best solution. So, for example, if they have the skills, but they don't have the proper support, they don't have the proper resources, they don't have the support from the management, they don't have the morale, if they perform good and they are not feedback from their managers that they are doing well, so perhaps there is something wrong with the management in the organization and training may not be necessary. And if training should be pushed with this context, it might be a waste of money and resources as well. All right. At this point, we are done with the person analysis. So let's go deeper now to the task analysis. So what is the difference between job and task? Job here is a specific position required to completion of certain tasks, while task is the employee's work activity in a specific job. Job here is really the overall, it's the bigger picture. So task here is the segments or the component of a specific job. So for example, what's your job? My job is a professor at a university. So what are your tasks? I have several tasks. So I teach undergraduate students, do research, do research collaboration with other researchers, that is in similar with my research interests and expertise. Do consultations as well with students and other administrative tasks such as paper checking and yeah. So that's the task, and my job as a professor. So yeah, that's the differences. So, I've been mentioning key SAs before, and knowledge here, K here stands for knowledge, and that includes the facts, the procedures. Skill here is the competency in doing the knowledge, like the skills, like it could be the application of the knowledge, and the ability here is the this includes the physical and the mental capacities to perform a task. So ability is the capacity, skill is the competency, right? Like how much skill is it needed? And ability is how can we do a specific task? And knowledge is what is the basis in doing the skill and the abilities, right? So these are the steps involved in task analysis. So this will be your guide in doing task analysis in your chosen organization. So first or step one is select the job or jobs to be analyzed. What job are we going to analyze? Are we going to analyze the rank and file or the middle manager or the executive positions? Right. Next, step two, develop a preliminary list of tasks performed on the job by you can interview and observe expert employees and their managers, or you can talk with others who have performed the task analysis, right? Or you can do observation, right? So you can do what have been do with this position, for example, customer service representative or agent. So what is the normal everyday task of a call center agent? So you can list or enumerate. You can also validate the information by asking the managers or the SMEs. Step 3, you need to validate or confirm the preliminary list of tasks if this is correct or not. Right? You need to validate the information. Step 4, you need, once the tasks have been completed or identified, it is important to identify uh, the knowledge, the skills, and the abilities necessary to successfully perform each task, right? So, for example, if you have identified that customer service, a, a call center agent's number one task is to assist the queries of the customer. So, what should be the knowledge, skill, and the abilities of that specific task, right? So, next is we have number two task. So, gauge or perform the software, right? Engaging in navigating the software of the policy of the client, right? So what are the knowledge, skills, and the abilities needed on that matter, right? So please take note of that because that will be also the requirements for your midterms. So that will be giving you now hints on what we're going to do. Right? Another aspect of task analysis is what we call competency models. So these competency models identifies the competencies necessary for each job, right? So these job as a call center agent or BPO or customer service representative, what will be the um, necessary competencies, right? Skills and abilities in order to perform the job, right? Competency models provide descriptions of competencies that are common for an entire occupation or organization. So for those existing organizations, most of them have these competency models. But this is very challenging for those who just started with their business and small businesses as well. So competency models can be used by either two. Number one, performance management, which will be taught in your IO psychology soon. And of course, identify the best employees to fill open positions. So this is mostly for internal hiring. So for internal hiring, if there are open positions, who can perfectly fill in the um, the vacant position. And performance management here is referring to how can we increase the performance or the efficacy of the employees in our organization, and if the people in the organization are not that performing, how can we increase their performance? So figure 3.5 here is the process used in developing a competency model. So number one, again, this is very, I think this is the very nature or the very basic in doing analysis. We start with the business strategy, the business goals. What is the goal of the organization? Because that's our framework, that's our ground, that's our where we start. Because that's the bread and butter of training, and of course in IO psychology, it's the business, it's the organization, right? After identifying the business, we go to step two, and that is to identify the jobs, positions, or the job families. So let's identify the clusters of jobs. So in what department, in this department, what are the specific job or job titles, etc., etc. After conducting um, job families, we'll go now to job interviews. So we'll be talking about people, like for this job, what have you been doing? What are the tasks here? What are the strengths? What do you think are the weaknesses? So we can do surveys, but it would be better if we can do both, like quantitatively and qualitatively. Like we can do scales, measure the scales, the competency, and perhaps we can also ask interviews, like what are the experiences? What motivates them? What are their strengths and what influences these strengths? And if they have weaknesses, of course, there will be weaknesses. What influences their weaknesses? What promotes the weaknesses? Right? And after that, we can now go to step number four, and that is developing the competencies and competency model. And lastly, we need to review the model and, of course, ask the SME. Competency models are useful for training and development in several ways. So this is the usefulness or the advantages of competency model. Number one, competency model identify behaviors needed for effective job performance. Right? And this is relation to job performance management. Right? Next is evaluate the relationship. Competency models can evaluate the relationship between the company's current training programs and the present needs. Right? So the current practices can and the needs of the employee. So we can look on this by looking and developing also the competency models of the organization, right? Competency model can provide a framework for ongoing coaching and feedback to develop employees for current and future roles. So again, a competency model can serve as a blueprint in helping coaches and trainers in giving feedbacks to their employees. Another importance of competency model is the succession planning. Like, and lastly, to integrate and align the company's HR systems and practices. And this is more on the IO psychology aspect, right? So we'll talk now about the scope of needs assessment. So what is the parameter? What will be the parameters of our needs assessment? To what extent are we going to do needs assessment? right? So we have here a term called rapid needs assessment. So needs assessment that is done quickly and accurately, but without sacrificing the quality of the process of the outcome. So from the word itself, it's a rapid needs assessment. So it's a quick needs assessment. It's very useful because it's only rapid, so it doesn't requires a lot of time. However, but with the rapid needs assessment, it's still able to um, compromise. Although it's fast, but it has also its own limitations, right? But in this context, in this rapid needs assessment, even if it's fast, it was not able to sacrifice the quality of the process. So there are several ways to conduct rapid needs assessment, and these are the following. Step one, scope of needs assessment depends on the size of the potential of the pressure point. So we go back to the forces, right? To the forces that influences the training, right? So this called the financial aspect, the legislation, the government, the business goals, right? So we need to go back to that. So it goes back really to the business goals and strategies, right? Next step in considering the rapid needs assessment is to consider using already available data collected for other purposes. So with the existing data, this will help you to conduct rapid needs assessment. And lastly, if there are business problems, technological developments, and other issues facing the organization are attuned to, training needs can be anticipated. So how do we do needs assessment in real life? I mean, that's a dilemma. So, um, we've been discussing a lot of models, a lot of steps, a lot of complicated figures, but how is it doing um, needs assessment in real life, right? From my experience as I've been working before in the guidance office, and the guidance office is given needs assessment. So they've been doing needs assessment to their students. So what is and these needs assessment will be the basis of the programs that they will be giving to the students. So for example, if the methods used there is on surveys and questionnaires, and the techniques is mostly on the use of um, yeah, it's mostly on interviews as well, and of course with the surveys. So, if they have found out that this certain domain is high, there's a need for example, academic exploration and guidance. So, the counselors will be creating programs that would enhance the career direction and the career awareness of the students. So that's my experience with needs assessment in guidance office, right? Yeah, so yeah, we have here the surveys. Training programs were developed to improve the identified skill deficiencies, their methods, and are congruent with the planned and environmental culture. So after identifying the specific needs of the organization, then that needs assessment will be the guide in drafting the training program, which will be discussed in the next lecture series. So this is actually the guide to the next step, and that is the training program. So needs assessment is just the step two. Step one was knowing the background, the framework, the different steps. So this is now the step two of the needs assessment of the whole training process, yeah, and that is creating the needs assessment. All right, so I just wanted to check how is everyone doing right now after watching the video. So the video is quite long. So please let me know your experiences right now. So how are you right now? So in terms with your energy level. So one is the lowest, 10 is the highest. How would you like to rate your energy level after watching the whole video series? Please let me know your answer in the comment section below. So in a nutshell, we were able to enumerate the importance of needs assessment in an organization. Second is we're able to identify the different needs assessment techniques. We were able to list the needs assessment process and compared the similarities and differences of organizational, person, and task analysis. Right? So with this, thank you so much for listening in our lecture series on employee training development needs assessment. So I hope that I can hear from you soon. So if you have any questions, you can email me on my email address. My email is available. You can message me on my socials. My socials is available also on my YouTube channel. So you can click there. And of course, don't forget to subscribe and like the videos so that I can create more videos related to this. And if you wanted to share the video, you may feel to share this to your classmates or to your colleagues. So I think that'll be all for now. Thank you so much and have a great day ahead. Goodbye.